other than sex, right? Which all makes sense. But now you've got to show that to the extent you rely on those factors, you have to rely on them reasonably. So it may be true that you're paying the guy down the hall more than the man because, I don't know, you go to the Giants game with him more often on the weekends and he's your buddy, and that's not a factor based on sex, but is it reasonable? Not really, right? So, and that kind of gets into also, it's got to be a factor that is job related and consistent with business necessity. So you may have somebody who's in a technical role who has their master's in English literature, but we don't care about that master's in English literature because it really isn't relevant to their job. And on top of it, you've got to show that whatever factor you rely on accounts for the entire wage differential. So it may, which is difficult under the law because we usually rely on statisticians to help us understand these pay differences. And statisticians will tell you they can't get to an actual zero, like no matter what they do. They look at whether something is statistically significant. And so I think that that's the way it's going to play out under the law, but we'll see. But that's part of the challenge now too. So just really quickly touching on some of the other requirements of the new law, there's an anti-retaliation provision that basically says that your employee should be able to discuss pay without being penalized or disciplined for doing so. So they can go to your HR manager and say, hey, what's my pay relative to others? Now, your HR manager doesn't necessarily need to disclose all of those numbers. And in California in particular, we have very strong privacy protections. It's included in our Constitution. So there may be some good reasons why you don't want to disclose certain things. But if somebody's coming to you and asking about why they're being, or what they're being paid, it should raise a red flag, and you should start looking into it, right? And then from a record-keeping perspective, you're going to want to be able to prove up all of these factors that explain legitimate pay differences. And so even though the record-keeping requirement now moves from 2 to 3 years, you should be doing this anyway, because it really is important. Documentation is critical to show all of the good things that you're working. So in my last minute of speed dating on California equal pay, I want to run through some really critical things to think about. One, you should be thinking about your compensation philosophy and your policies. What does your policy say, right? What are the factors that are important to your company in setting compensation? Some companies care about seniority, some don't. And if you don't care about seniority, then you want that in your policy so you can show later that it has nothing to do with it, right? You want to be prepared to articulate and document these reasonable applications of the pay factors that you've analyzed for your company that are important to your company. We talked about keeping records. You want to be thinking about who comparators are and document why. So job descriptions are important. You might want to go beyond job descriptions. If you have analysts in your company, like almost everyone does, are they all doing the same thing? Probably not. So you may want to think about parsing out those roles a little bit further. Audit your pay decisions. So this is a topic that's come up already today. What I would recommend is doing, and this sounds a little self-serving, do it under privilege. And the reason why you want to do that is because you don't want to tiptoe around this issue. You want to know what the issues are, and if you find problems, you want to resolve them. But you want to do them in a sensible way that's according to the law. And working with either inside counsel or outside counsel or both is really critical. And of course, training your managers on what pay disparities are and what the reasonable factors and legitimate factors are so that they can make the right decisions on their own as well. And with that, I will pass it to Brian Weber.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian, and I head up a team called People Analytics at Google, and I'm here representing work that I did with my colleague, Dr. Veronica Gilray. There, Veronica. So I do a lot of things in terms of research and analytics that support our people operations activities, but I think one of the most important is ensuring that our people activities, our people decisions are actually fair. Now, when you think about compensation, of course it's fair of course it's important because you want to be able to feed your family, you want to buy nice clothes at Gap, you want to do all sorts of things with that money. But it is also an indication of your value to the company, how respected you feel as an employee, how you feel relative to the people that you work with. And for a company that strives not to be evil, we want to make sure that we don't have any non-merit based influences on how we're paying people. So we analyze our data very carefully. Now, I guarantee you that almost every CEO out there would say when asked, I have no gender bias in my compensation practices. Some of them might even say, I don't even have to look at the data because I'm quite sure that we are the kind of company that would never have it there. But you look at the data that exists right now. Now you've heard Kelly talk about the statistics coming out of Professor Francine Blau and Lawrence Kahn's work that show that there's basically 79 cents on the dollar women making to men. Even after you control for all of the factors that we can, from industry to education to the kind of job that you have, there's still a gap. It's 92 cents to the dollar, but there's this 8% unexplained gap. Knowing that that exists, we at Google felt like we had to make sure that that wasn't part of what we have, or not part of our compensation. And so actually determining whether or not you have a pay gap is pretty complicated. And I scanned the crowd and it looks like you are craving for a regression analysis. And so that is exactly what I'm going to provide to you right now. I want to tell you how we approach doing an analysis like this so that at the end of it, we can confidently evaluate our compensation outcomes. So it begins with a lot of the things that you've already heard about today. You have to make sure that you're comparing people who are doing similar kinds of work and they're in the similar kinds of pay markets. And so we always set our parameters. What kind of job are people doing?